Hello and welcome back to Kevin Can't Play Today. Today we start a new series, probably monthly. I don't think I'll be doing it more than that. Uh, Kind of a documentary series on aircraft and probably maybe tanks later from the game War Thunder. Today we start with one of my favorite planes of all time and one of the best planes ever built, the Douglass SBD Dauntless. Um, Plane we will be flying, I believe, is an SBD 2 variant. Um yeah, I've loved this plane for a long time. Beautiful plane, beautiful performance. Pretty much won the war for us in the Pacific, even though it was classified as outdated even before the war started. It was one of the highest contributing planes in the entirety of the war, especially in the Pacific. But they ranged from Norway to Australia, and even the home islands of Japan. After the war ended, there was many of them stationed there. Uh, it was instrumental in many battles, including the Battle of the Philippines, where they were actually not invited by the Army, but the Marine Corps decided to come in and give them close air support anyway, since the Army didn't really have that, and pretty much saved their butts there. Uh, anyway, let's go to the actual view here. What's the picture? Yeah, there we go. Alright. And here we have it, the SBD-2. Now this was a great variant here. Had two 50 caliber or two 30 caliber machine guns in the rear turret, two in the front, right in the nose there. Surprising amount of actual air kills. But we'll get into that here in a minute once we take off. Uh, let's see, make sure all my flaps are working right. And there's the distinctive air brake that was phenomenal for its time. Flaps for takeoff, and let's go. And we are airborne. Alright, get into the reading here while we're getting up to altitude. The Douglass SBD Dauntless is a World War II American naval scout plane and dive bomber that was manufactured by the Douglass Aircraft Corporation from 1940 through 1944. The SBD, standing for Scout Bomber Douglas, was the United States Navy's main carrier-based scout dive bomber from mid-1940 to mid-1944, though the Marine Corps continued on with it much later. The SBD was also flown by the United States Marine Corps, both from land air bases and aircraft carriers. The SBD is best remembered as the bomber that delivered the fatal blows to the Japanese carriers at the Battle of Midway in June 1942. The type earned its nickname Slow but Deadly from its SBD initials during this period. During its combat service, the SBD was an excellent naval scout plane and dive bomber. It possessed long-range, good handling characteristics, maneuverability, potent bomb load, great diving characteristics, good defensive armament, and ruggedness. One land-based variant of the SBD, in omitting the arrestor hook, seen right there by the tail, was purpose-built for the United States Army Air Forces as the A-24 Banshee, which actually got more service from the Marine Corps later on. But yeah, that's the way it goes. Uh, its role was as a dive bomber and a scout plane, uh, built by the United States, manufactured by Douglas Aircraft. The designer was Ed Heinemann, who was a brilliant aircraft designer. First flown in 1st of May 1940. Retired finally by Mexico in 1959. So, I mean, it had a pretty long run. Primary users were the United States Navy, the U.S. Marine Corps, and the Army Air Forces. To a lesser extent, the Free French Air Force used them. It was produced from 1940 to 1944. A total of 5,936 of all types were built. It was was developed from the earlier Northrop BT bomber, which wasn't the best. It was great for like 1936, but other than that, not so good. Skip past that bit. Straight to the operational history. We might be over that target. Getting there. Go do a dive bomb here for a sec. On the reading. Target. Yeah, that's good enough. Drop in on this little island here. This particular plane's carrying 200-pound bombs and one 1,000-pound bomb. Now this plane was very accurate on the dive. And could pull out at very low altitudes. Dial our speed back up here. Just more flying around while I talk. The U.S. Navy and Marine Corps SBDs saw their first action at Pearl Harbor, where most of the Marine Corps SBDs of the Marine Scout Bombing Squadron 232 were destroyed on the ground at Iwo Mooring Mast Field. Most Navy SBDs operating with their aircraft carriers, which did not operate in close cooperation with the rest of the fleet. Several Navy SBDs were flying to Pearl Harbor from carriers on the morning of December 7th and engaged with Japanese aircraft. Most Navy SBDs at Pearl Harbor, like their Marine Corps counterparts, were destroyed on the ground. On 10th of December 1941, SBDs from the USS Enterprise sank the Japanese submarine I-70. In February and March 1942, SBDs from the carriers USS Lexington, USS Yorktown, and Enterprise took part in various raids on Japanese installations in the Gilbert Islands, the Marshall Islands, New Guinea, Rabaul, Wake Island, and Marcus Island. The first major use of SBDs in combat was at the Battle of Coral Sea, where SBDs and TBD Devastators sank the Japanese light carrier Shoho and damaged the Japanese fleet carrier Shokaku. SBDs were also used for anti-torpedo combat air patrols, and they scored several victories against Japanese aircraft trying to attack the Lexington and Yorktown. Their relatively heavy gun armament with two forward-facing 50 caliber machine guns, which I am employing at this moment, and either one or two rear flexible mount 30 calibers. Second, there we go. The AN-M2 model machine guns was effective against lightly built Japanese fighters, and main pilots and gunners took aggressive attitudes to the fighters that attacked them. SBD pilot Stanley Swede Veitasa was attacked by three Japanese A6M20 fighters during the, I think that was at Midway, and he shot down two of them and cut off the wing of a third with a head-on pass from his wingtip. Very rugged aircraft. The SBT's most important contribution to the American war effort came during the Battle of Midway in early June 1942. Four squadrons of Navy SBD dive bombers attacked and sank or fatally damaged all four of the Japanese fleet carriers present, disabling three of them in the span of just 6 minutes. The Akagi, the Kaga, and the Soryu, and later in the day, the Hiryu. They also caught two straggling heavy cruisers of the Midway bombardment group of four, heavily damaging them, with the Mikuma eventually sinking. At the Battle of Midway, Marine Corps SBDs were not as effective. One squadron, VMSB 241, flying from the Midway Atoll, was not trained in the techniques of dive bombing yet, with their new Dauntlesses having just partially converted from the SBTU Vindicator, which sucked. Instead, its pilots resorted to the slower but easier glide bombing technique, where you just kind of come in at a pretty low angle here, not directly over them like I did with the original bombardment, which left them open to anti-aircraft guns. This led to many of the SBDs being shot down when they became vulnerable during their glide. Although one survivor from these attacks is now on display at the National Naval Aviation Museum, and is the last surviving aircraft to fly in the battle. On the other hand, the carrier-borne squadrons were effective, especially when they were escorted by their F4F Wildcat teammates. The success of dive bombing was due to one important circumstance. Unlike American squadrons that attacked shortly before, one at a time, allowing defending Japanese Zero fighters to concentrate on each squadron to shoot them down or drive them away from the carriers, 3 squadrons totaling 47 SBDs, VS-6, VB-6, and VB-3, and 1 squadron of TBD torpedo aircraft, VT-3, and 6 F4F fighters all arrived simultaneously, with 2 of the SBD squadrons arriving from a different direction from the other squadrons. Without central fighter direction, the approximately 40 Zeros concentrated on the TBDs, with some fighting the F4Fs covering the TBDs, leaving the SBDs unhindered by fighter opposition in their approach and attack, although most of the TBDs were shot down, even because they were pretty slow. However, the contributions of the Marines and the earlier squadrons in that was to chew through a lot of the enemy's fuel and ammunition, leaving not nearly enough for them to fight off the later attacks. In fact, a lot of the Japanese aircraft were refueling when they were attacked by the second wave, having expended all their ammo and fuel fighting off the first waves. So, despite not having killed a lot of enemy shipping, they did contribute quite a bit to the attack. Let's see, where were we? The SBDs also played a major role in the Guadalcanal campaign, operating off both American carriers and from Henderson Field on Guadalcanal. SBDs attacked Japanese shipping throughout the campaign and proved lethal to Japanese shipping that failed to clear the slot by daylight. Losses inflicted included the carrier Ryujo, sunk near the Solomon Islands on the 24th of August. 3 other Japanese carriers were damaged during the 6-month campaign. SBDs sank a cruiser and 9 transports during the decisive naval battle of Guadalcanal. During the decisive period of the Pacific War, the SBD's strengths and weaknesses became evident. While the American strength was dive bombing, the Japanese stressed their Nakajima B-5N2 Kate torpedo bombers, which had caused the bulk of the damage during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. In the Atlantic Ocean, the SBD saw action during Operation Torch, the Allied landings in North Africa in November 1944. The SBDs flew from the USS Ranger and 2 escort carriers. 11 months later, during Operation Leader, the SBDs saw their first European debut when aircraft from the Ranger attacked Nazi shipping around Bodo, Norway. Oh, we're way off. There we go. During the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, a long-range twilight strike was made against the retreating Japanese fleet at or beyond the limit of attacking airplanes' combat radius. Dang it, where the hell am I? Paying more attention to reading than flying. The force had about 20 minutes of daylight over their targets before attempting the long return in the dark. Of the 215 aircraft, I can make this dive. There we go. It's a very accurate dive bomber. I'm out of bombs, otherwise I would have actually dropped. Anyway, of the 215 aircraft, only 115 made it back. 20 were lost to enemy action in the attack, while 80 more were lost when one by one they expended their fuel and had addition to the sea. In the attack, however, were 26 SBDs, all of which made it back to their carriers. The Battle of the Philippine Sea was the last major engagement where SBDs made up a significant part of the carrier bomber force. Marine squadrons continued to fly SBDs until the end of the war. Although the Curtiss Helldiver had a more powerful engine, a higher maximum speed, and could carry nearly 1,000 pounds more in bomb load, many of the dive bombers pilots preferred the SBD, which was lighter and had better low-speed handling characteristics, critical for carrier landings. The Dauntless was one of the most important aircraft in the Pacific War, sinking more enemy shipping in the War of the Pacific than any other Allied bomber. In addition, Barrett Tillman, in his book on the Dauntless, claims that and it's not a claim, it's actual fact, that it has a plus score against enemy aircraft, meaning that it was credited with more victories over enemy planes than losses due to enemy action. This is considered to be a rare event for a bomber. A total of 5,936 SBDs were produced during the war. The last SBD rolled off the assembly lines at Douglass Aircraft Plant in El Segundo, California on 21st of July, 1944. The Navy placed emphasis on the heavier, faster, and longer range SB2C. From Pearl Harbor through April 1944, SBDs had flown 1,189,473 operational air hours, with 25% of all operational hours flown off aircraft carriers being in SBDs. Try and stick this landing real quick. Missed the trap. Go around for another pass here a sec. I was a little distracted on my approach. Its battle record shows that in addition to 6 Japanese aircraft carriers, 14 enemy cruisers have been sunk, along with 6 destroyers, 15 transports or cargo ships, and scores of lesser craft. It was flown by several countries: Chile, France, Mexico, Morocco, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Surviving aircraft, there's one in New Zealand. There are 6 airworthy in the United States. One here locally in Madras, Oregon, at Erickson Aircraft Collection. One in Texas, one in Chino, California, and one up in Bellevue, Washington. Another one in Chino, an SBD-5, and one in Peachtree, Georgia. There's also one A-24B on display and several others. Many more are actually in restoration at this point in time, and hopefully we'll be flying again soon. Alright, let's try and concentrate and stick this landing, and I'll get to the specs. really close. That's not good. I was a little closer to the carrier than I thought I was. Come on, catch, catch, catch. Dang it. Alright, well, we'll fly around for a little bit more. At least I haven't wrecked it yet. So general characteristics from the SBD 5. Crew of 2, length of 33 feet, wingspan 41 feet, and a height of 13 feet. Uh, empty weight was 6,404 pounds. Loaded weight up to 9,359 pounds. Max takeoff weight, including pilots, was 10,070 pounds. It had a Wright R182060 radial engine with 1,200 horsepower. Maximum speed was 255 miles an hour at 1,400 feet. Cruise speed was more modest, 185 feet. Range of 1,115 miles, service ceiling of 25,530 feet. Rate of climb was actually pretty significant at 1,700 feet per minute. Had, in general, two 50 caliber machine guns in the front and two 30 calibers in the back, and could carry up to 2,250 pounds of bombs. Alright, now we're actually going to get serious about this carrier landing. And we'll wrap it up. Yes, I know I'm low on fuel. That's why I'm landing. Come on, dang it. Alright, go around for another pass. Might have to drop my air brakes. Come on. We don't have a choice on this one. Come on, get down. Get down. Ah, well, that wasn't successful. I tried too hard. Put my nose down too hard. So we got a ditch. I did not drown. That was a good ditch. You lie. Yeah, back to here. Yeah, carrier landings are not easy, if you ask any real pilots. So I've been fortunate to know actually two pilots of the SBD Dauntless, one Marine and one Navy pilot. Uh, Larry didn't get into it until much later. He was stationed on the Enterprise towards the very end of the war. Didn't actually get to participate in combat. Probably, yeah, it might be a good thing. However, he did go on to fight in both Korea and Vietnam with great success. And then there was my great uncle Chuck, my great grandpa's brother. He was a Marine Corps pilot. laggy. And mainly was flying this as a trainer for carrier landings. He later went on to fly Wildcats and Hellcats as a night fighter pilot in the Pacific. Uh, he had a very close scrape with death in one of these, though. Uh, so I'm going to link a really neat article I found on the Dauntless below, as well as a interview with my great uncle Chuck, where he talks about that close call with his Dauntless, as well as later in the war on Okinawa, where he almost died in a Hellcat. And that's just a miraculous tale of survival. So I highly recommend checking it out. I hope you enjoyed the first installment of uh, my War Thunder series here, and we'll be going on to other planes later. I think I might try another one of my favorite planes, which is the P-38 Lightning next. Uh, we also get a takeoff from Oahu on that one, so it's less annoying. There's more to do, more to see than at Midway, which there was not much at all. Or wait, I think that was Wake. I think that was Wake Island. We were overflying. Um, yeah. So until next time, remember whatever you do, don't die. Later.